good day to you. I'm here with Diederik Wolsak, and today we're going to talk about Diederik's way to facilitate deep psychological healing using a 6-step technique that he uses at his Attitudinal Healing Center in Costa Rica. And it's based largely on the principles of A Course in Miracles and Jampolsky's work. So first of all, welcome, Diederik.
Thank you, Ken.
Let's start with attitudinal healing. Attitudinal healing. What is attitudinal healing?
Attitudinal healing is I guess a healing modality or a way of living which was introduced by Jampolsky 40 years ago, and it was derived directly out of A Course in Miracles. But Jerry realized brilliantly that A Course in Miracles, while it is an extraordinary psychospiritual teaching, wasn't going to be received by more than a handful of people. We always feel that if 1,000 people pick up the course, maybe 10 will dive into it and really do it, and the rest will say this is too difficult, it's too complicated, too many words. The best I've ever heard was I don't like the paper, or this is a religion, or it's a patriarchal manifesto, whatever people come up with. And Jerry realized that that would be an obstacle. And so what he did was distill some of the essential teachings from the course into 12 principles, which are the principles of attitudinal healing. The first one being the one that I use extensively and absolutely love: the essence of my being is love. If you don't leave the word "my" off, you're talking about the truth. The essence of being is love. And of course, that is not my experience on a daily basis, and the reason why people come to our center for a variety of reasons is primarily that they're not living the experience of the essence of being is love. So then the question rises, what prevents me from experiencing that truth under all circumstances? And what prevents me is a set of beliefs that I made up at a very early age. And those beliefs have actually become what people would call my personality. So contrary to what most people believe, we don't believe that anybody has a personality or anybody has a character. We believe and hold that what I think is my personality is nothing but a set of beliefs. And if those beliefs are wonderful and positive and they fill my life with amazing experiences, then by all means, play with those beliefs. They're still beliefs, but you can play with those and have fun. If, however, those beliefs are limiting, and we would call that limiting core beliefs, then perhaps you could be motivated to take a look at those and see if they can be transformed. And the beautiful thing about our work is that they can absolutely be transformed.
Yeah.
Because they are just beliefs, they're not the truth.
Yeah.
So the more I work on transforming my core beliefs, the more I scrape those away, call them barriers to love, the more I remove those barriers to love, the more aware I become and start experiencing the truth of who I am. And the truth of who I am and who you are is the same and is love.
Now you seem to have quite a firm policy on any kind of chemical or medical aid with addiction, and you take the belief that all of the dependencies on any kind of chemical substance can be replaced with this technique, or looking into the core core dysfunction, if you will.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I would call it a firm position, but it certainly has been our experience that if I believe that there's something outside of me that can bring me an increased awareness of joy and happiness, I'm mistaken. And whether that is more money, whether that's a new car, or whether it's Prozac, really doesn't make any difference. It is the belief that something outside of me is going to bring me something that I now believe I don't have. And because that's impossible, it will ultimately not work. I mean, every one of us, every ego on this little planet has had experiences of receiving something that I thought I wanted, whether it's a new car or a new partner or a sunny day, and then briefly I feel really good. Briefly I'm very happy about it, but why is that? It's simply because the ego, which is a desire-making machine, is briefly satisfied. So for a very brief moment, whether it's a day, a week, or an hour, the ego says, okay, that's all we wanted. We just wanted more money, or we just needed this pill, and now we feel better. We just wanted this glass of wine, and now we feel better.
Yeah.
And that's true, you do feel better. But if it worked, if wine or a wonderful beer on a hot summer evening worked as a long-term remedy, we would be prescribing wine.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't generally do that. So, but we do prescribe prescriptions which in my mind are exactly the same thing. Many years ago, the pharmaceuticals came out with a brilliant idea of calling something, I think it was called a chemical imbalance in the brain, which they could never prove, which was never linked to anything, but it stuck. And so even today we get people who say, well, why are you taking these medications? Well, I have a chemical imbalance in my brain and this helps balance it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
I may well have created a serotonin deficit or whatever scientists might want to call it, but I've created that with my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a matter of taking the thinking back to who is the I that's thinking, who is the I that made up this thought, and then transform that I, which is a small I, into the capital I. And as soon as I do that, this whole vacuum that my ego says exists is proven to be fraudulent and does not exist, and is then filled with the truth of who I am. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about this big I? Because it seems to me that the foundations for this knowledge of the big I comes from the non-dual space,
Mm-hmm.
non-dual teachings that
Yep.
that comes from a lot of the materials that I've seen from the Choose Again booklet,
Yep.
including Course in Miracles. Tell us about that.
Well, the big I, or the big S self, the capital S self, is who I am, who you are, who this table is, who Tom is, who this camera is. That's the big S self. The big S self is everything. It's all there is. The tiny S self that I think I am is just part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the tiny S self that I think I am is a thought. And as soon as I, was Descartes who said, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, which is an absolutely valid statement, but he forgot to add the word separate. So the minute I think, and therefore think that who I am is because I'm thinking, it's because I thereby separate myself from the big S, the capital S self.
Mm-hmm.
So the capital S self is all there is. The small L self is the one that I will defend at all cost. I believe it's important, I believe it matters, I believe people should listen to me, I believe I have something to bring to this world. I have nothing to bring to this world. Absolutely nothing, because there's nothing to bring. The world is. But the world is a thought in my mind. And in that thought, once I accept that as true, and once I accept the fact that I, small S self, have nothing to say or contribute, then I can play in the big S world. And play with you, and play with Claudia, and play with Tom, and just have fun, knowing that none of it matters. In truth, everything matters in my experience. And that's a confusion people make often in the so-called new Age world. They say, oh, it doesn't matter, it's just an illusion. In the meantime, they're miserable. So it does matter. I have to look at it. I have to look at it till I've resolved the small L self that chose the reaction of being miserable in the illusion, and then I can recognize I made it up, and then I can recognize it is an illusion. But to say it is but an illusion while I'm miserable is just not valid. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a very important point, because I think people get confused between where this big S self exists. It seems to exist in a space outside of this world.
Right.
And Course in Miracles tells us that God didn't create this world. How would you explain, or I mean, you said a little bit about how that coexists between the small S and the big S, but to somebody who says that, big ass self doesn't exist in this world, what would you say?
Big as self, it is impossible for the big as self not to exist wherever I can think of. So whether I can think of this world, such as it is, of course that's the big as self. Whether I think of a complete absence, there is no world, which is another statement from the Course, the self is there too. So whatever I can think of with my tiny little human ego brain is just a minute part of the self. So the self is everywhere. The self is everything there is and is nowhere at the same time. And that's confusing to the ego because the ego cannot comprehend that. And people always say, well, I don't understand oneness. Of course I don't understand oneness. Because if there was an I to understand it, there would have to be duality. It cannot be understood. It can only be accepted as an absolute truth and then lived in a way that becomes more and more acceptable and more fun.
And how does that fit in with love?
Sorry?
How does that fit in with love?
Self and love is the same thing. Self and love is the same thing, and again, the ego doesn't understand that. The ego can say, I love Ken, I love Claudia, I love Tom. That's not love. That means that Ken is behaving in a way that my ego approves of. I didn't like his hair, so I put his cap on, now I love Ken. That's how the ego works. The ego always has a condition attached to. That's why when I say I love you, it's already not love. Because there's no you to love. Now if I say I love, then that automatically includes everybody in this room. So it becomes immediate and instantaneous. So the purpose of a relationship, a so-called intimate relationship from my point of view, is to continuously keep looking at all the triggers that are stimulated within the relationship in order to recognize that those triggers only have one purpose, and that is to heal the beliefs that make up me. And that's a joint effort. If both partners are engaged in that, wonderful. The other partner does not have to be engaged in it at all. The other partner already is love. Doesn't need to change.
Let's talk about the 6-step process that you use at your centers. Tell us about what those 6 steps are.
The 6 steps are a very simple process that is designed to be done by yourself. It's designed to be done 200 or 300 times a day. Every time I have a minor ripple, a minor trigger is an opportunity for me to do that process. And the process, very simply, leads from an upset, which the ego always wants to justify, and so here's the reason, to a resolution which undoes, or the Course uses the word atonement. The atonement of the ego, which is the undoing of the belief, is the ultimate goal of this process. So I go from I'm upset to I remember now who I am. That's it. And then the steps in between, which we'll go into in some detail, I hope. We can start that now if you'd like.
Yeah.
So the first step of this process is simply to acknowledge that I'm upset.
So would you rather work with Tom right now, and then we can.
Well, let's do the theory first,
Okay.
and then we'll work with Tom, and we'll do a practical application, provided Tom has something he's upset about, and I'm sure he does. By he's probably thought about 20 things he can be upset about in a minute. Or we can talk about your landlord if you're not done with that yet. Actually, your landlord might be watching this, so you might. See, it's so important that I recognize.
Sure, why not?
That this work has nothing.
Built this whole session.
Okay,
to the
let's do it.
maximum.
So the first step is to acknowledge that I'm upset. I'm not at peace. Now, if I'm really honest, the reverse is so rare. I'm so rarely completely at peace that it's not hard to find material to work on during a day. I was half jokingly say 300 or 400 times a day would be a good number to do this process. So the first step is I'm upset. And you don't say ever, it's okay, or he always talks like that, or no wonder I'm upset and here's the reason why, which is how the ego solves things. It's trying to change Tom, or trying to change Claudia, or trying to change you, trying to change the city I'm in, the fact that we couldn't find parking, and my old dislike for cities came up. Never justify it. One of the early lessons from the course is that there's never a reason to be upset. There never is a reason to be upset. So to recognize that, yes, I'm upset, but the reason is only in my mind. It's not outside of my mind. It's not in the outside world, is essential. So I'm upset. Step two, it's about me. And that to most egos is the most difficult struggle. Because we're so used to saying, this is not have nothing to do with me. This is because he or she talked to me in a certain way, or this because whatever excuse my ego comes up with. It always has a reason to be upset. This one says, no, there isn't. This is about me. It's purely about me. So if I'm willing to accept that particular step, I'm 80% on the way to freedom. It's about me. Now the ego will say, okay, if it's about you and something has gone wrong, then it's all your fault, which is a natural ego reaction to anything. It's either your fault or it's my fault. The beauty of our work is that we don't accept fault. And why don't we accept fault? Because we don't accept that anything ever goes wrong. So if nothing ever goes wrong, there's no need for fault. There's absolutely no point in looking for that. There is no fault. Are you with me on that?
Well, it sounds great in theory, but I mean, this is a tremendously radical. You're saying that.
I'm not saying it. It's a simple truth. Nothing ever goes wrong. And I'm not saying, please, please, please get this. I'm not saying anything new. This shit has been said by people for thousands of years. All you're hearing these days more and more from more and more people is a remembrance of that teaching. But I think it was, I can't remember his name, it was a Chinese philosopher in the 5th century who said the decision between right and wrong is the primal disease of the mind. So this has always been taught. And the ego can only deal in right or wrong. And it's always you that's wrong. Unless I become an enlightened ego, and then I'll say, well, it's all me. It's all my fault. Which is a far more enlightened position from an ego point of view, and it's still completely insane. So nothing ever goes wrong. The third step is one where I have to come in touch with what I'm feeling. And that's very difficult, and was particularly difficult for me when I first started doing this work.
Right.
Because I had two feelings. There was numb and rage, and that was it. And there was nothing in between. People that come to see us have a far wider range of emotions that they're aware of, but even then, it sometimes is not easy. So I have to know what I'm feeling, and for that we have designed a feeling sheet which has some 90 different feelings on it. And when you're doing this process, Claudia can find it in, oh, there it is. Yeah, it's on that as well. In the beginning, when I do a process, and when we work with newcomers, we say, okay, you're upset. For the viewers, in our little workbook, there are all the feelings. What are the feelings that are coming up right now? And then I'll identify if I'm really aware, if I'm really tuned into what's going on, I'll identify 20 or 30 feelings quite easily. The first one on the list is abandoned. People always skip over that. And yet that is always the primary feeling, because that takes us back to the story that the Bible starts with, I was abandoned by God. I took a bite of the apple and I was kicked out of paradise. I was abandoned by the one love that I was connected to. Yes, Eve came with me and that was wonderful, but it wasn't a substitute for the oneness that I existed in before the bite of the apple. So abandonment is huge, and yet we almost always skip over it. So you can be absolutely sure that abandonment is there. There could be afraid, there could be embarrassed, there could be invalidated, there could be put down, there could be punished, whatever it is. Then the next question I ask myself is this familiar? Is this a feeling that I now have, a familiar feeling? And if I'm honest, I have to say, yeah, of course. And the reason I have to say, yeah, of course, because I do not make new feelings. Every feeling is the manifestation of a replay of an experience that I had, in my case, anywhere from 70 to 62 years ago, a long time ago. So every feeling that I have is a replay. So I'll accept that. I'll accept the fact that it's about me. I now know that this feeling is not new and it has nothing to do with the circumstance that I believed it had to do with. And then I'm ready to do the real work, which means going back to, when did I first feel this? Where did this come from? And then people can go back to their earliest memory. Their earliest memory literally means that. So that could be when they were 12, it could be when they're 2, it could be when they're born, it could be in utero. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. There's no prize. You don't get a star when you remember in utero, and the other person gets a 3rd class because they remember when they're 5.
Well, but I mean, how can you feel embarrassed in the womb? I mean, are these just manifestations of the primary one, and do they go into sort of like a specific? See,
I can't answer your question, how can I feel abandoned embarrassed in the womb, but I can tell you that I heard this from a number of clients. They went back in their emotional memory to being in the womb, and I always thought, well, okay, I'm not going to argue with you because this is your experience, but in my wonderful ego critical mind, I thought this goes a little far. I mean, it's becoming a little too woo-woo. Till there was an experience that I had myself, which a feeling that I really could not trace back to anything cognitively accessible. So I did a holotropic breathing on it, and what came out was the belief that I should not have been born. That the feeling that I felt was chosen by that belief. I should not have been born. Where did that come from? Well, that came from my mother was almost 9 months pregnant when the Japanese landed in Batavia on Java, and she and my brother and my father fled into the mountains, and guess what she was thinking? Not a great time to be pregnant. I got that message. So psychologists and doctors will not acknowledge the fact that your brain, your being, receives energetic messages from inception. I now am completely convinced of that. I have no evidence, I can't prove it, there's no lab test that will show it, but I've seen it so many times that energetically there's something received, there's a message received. And energetically that is picked up by the infant, by the fetus, by the young person. And I just read a fantastic line this morning, and I can't even remember who said it, but it was, every child is marinated in the subconscious of the parents.
That's great.
So we pick it up. And it may not be verbatim, it may not be verbal, but it is energetically. There's something that I pick up as a small child. So the feeling goes back to the first time I felt that, and what did I make that experience to mean about me? What was my experience of that moment? What was my interpretation? The easiest way for me to look at it is when my father had a rather volcanic temper and would beat us would beat my brother on a regular basis. What was my interpretation of that? I must be bad. Otherwise he wouldn't do this. He would also tell me I was bad, and I believed it. That's the problem. I believed it.
Yeah.
So I picked up a belief that I'm a bad person. Guess what happens? If I pick up a belief that I'm a bad person at an early age, I have no choice but to act as if I'm a bad person the rest of my life. I don't have free will. Does that make sense? So the only free will I have is to go back to the moment when I first picked up that message and transform that moment and say, no, that was a mistaken interpretation. That was not true.
Right, so you're saying the events just played on, and your definition of free will is to go back and see that that was just something that happened.
That was a
your
mistake.
Choice how to view it is free will.
Yeah, that was a mistake. So then the forgiveness that the Course talks about extensively is only in our work forgiveness for a belief. So it's never for what somebody did or what happened to me. It's simply forgive me for believing that when my father beat me, it meant that I was a bad person. That's a belief I made up.
Even in the womb is something that's unarticulated, but it forms a belief about self.
Absolutely. And so what we do then, we do a forgiveness on that particular instant that I remember, and then we revisit that moment again, go back to it, and say, how does it feel now? And if I was upset in that memory on a scale of 1 to 10, I was at an 8, but after doing the first forgiveness, I'm down to a 3 or a 4, then maybe it's the same belief that is still playing, or there could be additional beliefs that I wasn't aware of yet, that were formed at that moment. So if my father beats me as a little boy, I could make up I'm not lovable, I could make up I'm not important, I could make up I don't matter, I could make up I'm really bad, whatever it is, I made up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So all those beliefs may kick in at that point. Ultimately, of course, the only belief anybody would ever work with is forgive me for the belief that I'm separate. But in my experience and our experience at the center, that is too abstract. That is too abstract. I don't connect with that. So I work with the subjective beliefs just about that. And ultimately, yes, I do get down to forgive me for believing I'm separate. And then the response that I give myself, which is the only loving response, is you made that up, it's not true.
So, well, you're saying that everything is interconnected to a very deep, everything, all negative feeling is connected to a
All
deep
positive
core.
feelings too.
Okay. I would like to hear you talk about that.
Yeah. Well, all negative feelings clearly come from a mistaken core beliefs. All so-called positive feelings also come from a core belief. The problem with those core beliefs is that because the ego likes it, we're not going to work on them. But ultimately, they also come from the belief in separation. I just like who I am in the separation. But that won't work in the long run either. So ultimately, I have to go back to the truth of oneness, of I'm not here. I don't exist. There's nothing here. That's the ultimate goal of this work. Very few people want to go there or need to go there. It doesn't matter. If you
There's
come,
nothing here as in what?
nothingness is the truth. Because this is a thought. This is just a thought. The planet is a thought, you're a thought, I'm a thought, God is a thought. That's all.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
There's no substance to it. Is it netty, not this, not that, not this, not this, not this. No, not this. So constantly stripping is wonderful, but most people, including myself, are really happy to go from a 10 upsets to a 2 and say, this is a hell of an improvement. I'm feeling a lot better. And then from that 2, I can go back into the world and continue my path and continue to do my forgivenesses constantly in the actual process that maybe Tom is willing to do in a few minutes. We'll take his upset from a 9 to 0, and that's essential. So you and I are doing a process, we'll have to take it down to 0, because if I leave it at a 2 now, that 2 is like a small infection. We've cleaned it, we've stitched it up, it looks really good, and yet that little belief is still underneath there, and it's going to come back again, it's going to infect.
There are no minor upsets.
Yeah, exactly, and there are no small upsets. And then the very last step is the forgive me for forgetting. Forgive me for forgetting that I am love. Forgive me for forgetting that there is only love. Forgive me for forgetting that separation is an insane idea that I made up at a very early age. Forgive me for forgetting that this whole thing is just a thought.
Yeah.
And then I start skipping through the happy dream till the next upset, which is 0.02 seconds away, and then I can do it again.
So, does one have to work on a positive feeling as well?
Ultimately, yeah. Ultimately, all feelings are chosen by the ego. So a positive feeling is simply my ego saying, I like this. I like this room. I like the colors in that painting. That's a positive feeling. But it's still based on separation. So now the ego has just chosen something within the separation that it likes, which ultimately cannot be true either. But very few people will come all the way to Costa Rica to work on their positive feelings. That's not going to happen, myself included.
Last question before we move into the experiential phase. What is the ego?
for a course student, that's a wonderful question. The ego is a thought of separation. The ego is a thought that there could be anything other than love. The ego is a thought that anything could ever be wrong. The ego is a thought. It's a mistaken thought. It's a thought that I don't share. Any shared thought is a third thought with God or of God. Any other thought is a thought of the ego. It's just an idea.
Great.
As the Course says, well, what is the ego where the darkness was?
Thank you, Diederik. We're going to go into the second phase.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, Tom. So
Okay.
we're going to practice or do one sort of demonstration round of this process.
Okay.
And the question would be, is there anything in the last 24 hours that upset you, triggered you, even a tiny ripple?
The first thing that comes up is just a car cutting in front of me and me getting upset about it.
Wonderful. So that's a wonderful, fairly common experience that a lot of people do get triggered about. So step one would say, I'm upset.
I'm upset.
And it's really important that even at that early point, I resist to justify and say it was because of the car. So if I can just say I was upset without giving the reason for it, I stand a much better chance, because the minute I say it's about the car, I've got everybody agreeing with me.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the ego is always looking for collusion. So the ego wants to get the story out, wants to tell you why I was upset, and other people say, oh yes, I know how you feel. I had the same thing happen to me and it shouldn't happen, let's do something about it, etc., etc., etc.
Right.
So the first thing really is to say I was upset. There was something that triggered me. I'm not going to give in to the temptation to tell you what it was about. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
So I was triggered. Okay, step two. It's about me. Are you willing to say that? It had nothing to do with the car. That got me off.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's about me. The third step is, what was the feeling, the strongest feeling? So then you use the feeling sheet and look at each one of those. Really feel what you felt when this happened. And then look at all the feelings and read them out as you see them.
Angry.
I was angry.
Blame.
I wanted to blame.
Cheated.
I felt cheated.
Despair.
I felt despair.
Embarrassed.
I was embarrassed.
Helpless.
I felt helpless.
Offended.
I was offended.
Punished.
I felt punished
Rejected.
and rejected.
Self-conscious.
Self-conscious.
Silly.
Silly. That's
all
the
those
range?
yeah, those are all.
Okay, so
Pretty much fear
stay in the
into
feeling. Go back into the feeling. And then make it really big. Close your eyes. So again, remember the circumstance. Feel the feeling again. And then choose one feeling that stands out. What is the strongest feeling of all the ones you read out? What are you feeling right now?
Blame.
Blame. Okay, keep your eyes closed. So now go back to being a little boy. And the first time you remember feeling this feeling of blame. What's happening around you? So somebody's saying or doing something and you get that same feeling. What's happening?
Well, it's not really what they're doing, it's what they're not doing.
It's what they're not doing. Tell us what they're not doing.
They're not paying attention.
They're not paying attention to you? Wonderful. How old are you when this is happening?
Seems like 5, 6.
5-ish? And what's the message you gave yourself at that moment? They're not paying attention to me. What does that say about me?
It's not right now saying anything about me. It's just the anger and the blame that I'm
Right.
still feeling right now.
But keep in mind that I can only feel anger and blame that is directed at me. Remember the incredible line from A Course in Miracles, which says, the secret of salvation is about this: I am doing this to myself. No matter who takes the role of attacker or the form of the attack, still is this the truth. So if I'm feeling anger or blame, it is directed at me. And who is the I? What belief do I think I could have made up at the moment that I thought people were not paying attention to me? What did that say about me? What could be the message I gave myself about me?
Not important.
I'm not important. Wonderful. Now open your eyes and then say, forgive me for believing that I'm not important.
Forgive me for believing that I'm not important.
That is not true, John. You are all there is. You are love. Let it go. It's a mistaken belief. It is not true. Who you are is infinite, abstract love. That's all there is. And then I'll do it back to you, and you give me your response. So forgive me for believing that I'm not important.
So, I guess I don't understand. So I just tell you.
Yeah, you tell me why that is. You can say that's true. You're not important.
No,
Or you
I
can
see.
do forgiveness.
Okay, no, you are important.
Mm-hmm.
You are the image and likeness of everything. You are the essence of the only truth of love that there is.
Fantastic. Now close your eyes. Go back here about 5. And you feel that people are not paying attention to you. Or you notice that. How does that feel now?
It's kind of like not there.
It's not there. Now keep your eyes closed. And you're driving on the freeway coming from LA, and somebody cuts you off. How does that feel now?
There's no feeling there.
Fantastic. It says nothing about you. Beautiful. Then we do the last step, and that is forgive me for forgetting that I am love. And whether people cut me off or run into me, it says nothing about me. Go ahead.
Forgive me for forgetting that I am love.
Thank you. That is the truth. And whatever anybody says or does around you has absolutely no impact on who you are. Who you are is unchangeable. Who you are is just love. That's all you are. Forgive me for forgetting that I'm just love.
You are love. Your essence is love. There is not anything that can take that away from you. There is no circumstance, no person that could argue their way or convince you of something that you are not. Because you are love. That's your essence. Just that, whoever's telling you that, that's their essence also.
Thank you. Beautiful. So how long did that take?
Not very long.
Not very long. And keep in mind, this is the first time. I remember the first time I ever gave this to one of my clients in Vancouver. I said, here, this is a process I'd like you to do. I gave her that little strip. And I said, do this 3 or 4 times a day and call me in a day or so, see how it's going. So she called me the next day and I said, how did it go? And how many did you get done? And she said, I got 1 done and it took me 4 hours. That's how long it is in the beginning. Because the ego is going to fight this all the way. Because it wants to be right. This guy shouldn't have cut you off on the freeway. That was wrong. And you want to get that out first. So you want to honk, or you want to give him the finger,
Right.
or you want to do whatever.
Right.
You want to let him know he shouldn't have done that. But he should have done that. And he should have done that for me to get in touch with the belief that I developed when I was 5.
Right. It was an opportunity.
It was an opportunity. So instead of giving him the finger, you wave at him. You say, thank you. You know what? I got triggered again. Isn't that something? I had it happen to me, and Claudia was there. In Spain, we rented a car. This was a couple of weeks ago. And I refuse to take insurance because I mean, other than the legally required, because I feel I'm getting ripped off, which is all go back to a belief I won't get into now. But anyway, we're parked somewhere at a grocery store, and this large car parked next to me over the line on my side had opened his door onto the car. The door was still open. The point of the door was in the little hole that it had made in my car. And I was furious. It was really unbelievable how angry it made me. It's probably exactly the same belief that you just had. I'm not important, I don't matter. But with me, what also kicked in was scarcity. Because I don't have any money to pay for these things. I don't have 500 euros to get a car repaired. That's a belief. So a whole bunch of wonderful beliefs kicked in. And fortunately, it still happens, because that means I still have work to do.
Right.
I have a lot of work to do.
Right.
You heard Ayesha. Were you at the conference, by the way? No, you weren't.
No.
Ayesha yesterday said, beautiful, I have a lot of work to do because I'm a piece of work. And it's exactly true.
Yes.
So what happens after a while is that I develop a gratitude for upsets. Because it says, wow, another opportunity. Work to be done. Nothing ever goes wrong. So this guy putting a dent in my car was minute. It was barely visible, but it was a dent. This guy cutting you off on the freeway, what a gift.
It was, yes.
Yeah. And then
Absolutely.
if I practice this enough, and I practice this literally 200 times a day, often, then when the big things happen, I'm completely ready for it. Because I know there are no big things. There are no upsets that are bigger than others. Because I've trained my mind.
Right,
And
you just go
that's
through the process.
constantly. And it's so important that people, that I really accept the fact that this is about discipline. This is about a mind training. And the Course says that right in the beginning. It says, you say you want to be happy, you want to have joy in your life, and you don't have it now because your mind is totally undisciplined. Absolutely true. And the number of people that come to us and say, that's not true, I'm very disciplined. So why are you here? If you were disciplined, you'd be happy, because you would catch every thought that says something like, I'm not important.
Yes.
Cool?
Yes. Very
Have another
good.
upset? Something that's playing in your life, or what is a challenge in your life at the moment?
I guess the challenge is kind of like what this is. It's still taking things personal. Still taking things personal.
What have you taken personally, other than the car cutting you off, which you took personally?
Well, a small example of that is that I was in getting gas, or just pulled in, and there was a guy in a truck that wanted me to back up, and I'd been waiting for this spot.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I just go like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And then I caught myself, and all he wanted to do was for me to move a little bit back so we can swing in. He had a big long truck, so he could swing in there. And I go, I just reacted just like that without thinking about it, And all I had to do was back up a couple of feet, let him pass through, and then come
It would
in.
have been easy. Yeah.
It's just like automatic pilot. That's just a little.
Just instant default program.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's work through that one. So close your eyes. That was an upset. This tattoo says, this is about me. This is not about being in a gas station or having to back up a couple of feet. This is purely about me. Now you've done this already, the similar process. So what is the strongest feeling that you can remember feeling at that moment?
That he thinks he's more important than me.
So careful that you don't go to a thought. So the ego, what the ego now did was very quickly explain why I'm feeling it. But that won't work. Because whatever the ego's interpretation is, I know absolutely for sure it's wrong. So go back to the feeling. What was the strongest feeling you felt?
Rage.
Rage. Wonderful. Now go back to being a little boy, this little Tommy, about 2 or 3 feet, maybe 3 feet tall, feels this rage. What's happening around you?
I'm not being paid attention to.
I'm not being paid attention to.
Wow.
Fantastic. And the belief is?
I'm not important
I'm
again.
not important.
Wow.
So it's wonderful that you already do this now, and you did it so well. So now you do the forgiveness. Forgive me for believing I'm not important.
Forgive me for believing I'm not important.
And here comes a bit of a change in this. You are not important. The you think you are is not important. But who you are in truth is all important.
The who that I think I am really is not important. Is not important.
No. So people can cut you off, people can tell you to even leave the gas station, even though you waited for half an hour to get that spot. You can be forced out, it doesn't matter. It has no impact on who you are.
Right.
And that's where we go back to. So who am I in truth? I am love. Whether somebody puts a dent in my car or not, I am love.
Right, right. It's who I think I am that gets upset,
Gets
or who I
squeezed.
have to protect, or
Yep.
or the image, or whatever.
Right. So as soon as I'm upset, it is a self that I made up that's being activated.
Yes.
And that's the default program we're talking about. The default program is I'm not important. You made that up a long time ago. And that will probably play out in many different parts of your life.
I can see just the two that we did. It was just the same thing. It just came right back to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Beautiful. So you're in the gas station. Close your eyes. This guy tells you to back up a few feet. How do you feel?
Well, right now I feel gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gratitude for revealing to me that I have this automatic pilot thing that I still have to work, that I have to work through.
Fantastic. Then do the last step. Forgive me for forgetting that I am all there is.
Yeah. And forgive me for forgetting. Was it all there is?
And I am all there
That
is.
I am all there is.
I am the truck driver. I am the truck. I am the gas station. I'm all there is. And everything within that scene is made up by me. And it's made up by me in order to go back to recognition that that scene is all there is. That's who I am. So there's no little Tom Vargas who's told to move back a bit. You're everything. Thank God that is the truth, Tom. You are love. You're all there is.
That was beautiful. That was
Well done.
beautiful.
Thank
Oh
you.
yeah, that was beautiful. That was very good. That was very good.
The feeling of not good enough,
Okay.
being not good enough. It's showing up in my work as a photographer, in a struggle, and also it's showing up in my relationship, where I just feel not validated.
So
by
give
my
me
partner.
an instant in the last 24 hours where you were triggered, without having your ego tell you, and that is evidence for that belief. Because
Right.
it may not be, it may be, but
Yes.
it's best to really just say I was triggered, and then
Right.
step two.
Okay. Okay, I'll just go for the big one. Yeah, feeling that my partner is not there for me emotionally.
What evidence do you have of that in the last 24 hours?
Him, it's not in the last 24 hours. Can it be later?
Sure.
Later than that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Him saying that I'm not doing enough of work. I'm not stable enough, and because of my belief that this world is actually a spiritual world and not material. First spiritual, and then there's a material example
Mhm.
of our inner world, and him saying that like that's a delusion. So
That's just an illusion.
delusion. He called me delusion.
Okay, so
Yes.
you're delusional.
Yes.
He called you that verbatim?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So that's a good upset. Step two.
Yes.
What is step two? It's not about that. It's about
Okay.
me.
It's my B.
This is about me. This is not about my boyfriend calling me delusional. It's
Sure.
not about anybody calling
So
me.
I own that. Yes.
I have to own this. This
Yes.
is about me. Then the next step, where's the feeling sheet? It left the room. The next step is to go back to or you can use those. So he called me delusional. Now I have to look at all the feelings that came up when he did that.
Yes. I felt angry.
Felt angry?
Afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Dejected. Depressed. Despaired. Disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
There was a dread. I felt heartbroken, and there was a heaviness. I felt lonely. Felt offended. I felt punished. I felt rejected.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
Yay.
What a wonderful range. So close your eyes.
Okay.
Put yourself back in, was it at home, in the living room?
No, it was in a park.
In a park.
Beautiful side.
And he called you delusional. And what is the strongest feeling you can identify now?
Rejected.
Rejected. Okay, stay with that feeling and ask yourself, is that a familiar feeling? Do I feel that
Yes.
under other circumstances? This feeling of rejection.
Yes.
Yes. Now take it back to being a little girl. What's the first time that you remember feeling that same feeling? Obviously not the same circumstance because you don't have a boyfriend when you're 2 or 3. But something happens and you feel that same feeling of rejection. What is that? What's happening?
An image comes up, feeling my dad telling me you can't come. You're not gonna come.
Ah, you're not going to come. How old were you? How old are you now? When you're hearing that?
I'm 37.
But when you're hearing this, you can't come.
Probably
your dad?
like 3.
3. So your dad says you can't come. And then you made up, what about you? What did that say about you?
That I'm not good enough to come.
I'm not good enough to come. So open your eyes and say, forgive me for believing I'm not good enough.
Forgive me for believing I'm not good enough.
That's not true. You made that up. It's impossible.
Mm.
Whether you're allowed to come with your dad or not makes no difference. Whether your boyfriend calls you a 2 for 3 big frog or delusional makes no difference.
Mm.
You are love.
Mm.
You're intrinsically good enough. Your worth is established by God, not by what somebody says. Let it go. And I'll do the same one, and you do the forgiveness back to me. So forgive me for believing that I'm not good enough.
You're perfect the way you are. You're the being that is. There's nothing wrong.
Cool. Now close your eyes. You're this little girl, and your dad says you can't come. Wherever they're going. How does that feel?
The charge is gone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then stay with that and go back to the park. And this wonderful person that you live with says you're delusional. How does that feel?
I laugh.
Cool. You're done. So for now, that belief is transformed.
Yes.
That doesn't really mean that it's gone.
Yes.
But it does mean that you now know how to connect that feeling directly back to that belief. Just like in Tom's case, the same belief was triggered by 2 different circumstances. That same belief will be triggered many times with you too. The fact that you noticed a black Mercedes gives us a lot of information. Like
Yeah.
if it had been a beat up old Volkswagen, you wouldn't have minded, but it was that black Mercedes.
Oh, there was that definite thing, but I could have hit the car. Like it was. It was.
You don't
so
have to
aggressive.
justify it, it's okay. You're still insane.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. I thought it was delusional. I'm sorry.
Isn't
My
that the same
bad.
thing?
Yes.
It's exactly the same thing.
Have you seen this picture? It's a girl on a unicorn, and it says, somebody said I'm delusional. I almost fell off my unicorn.
Oh, yeah.
That's why my boyfriend, he's like, you like that.
Yeah.
However, I have a question, because what I've been really getting in touch with since your speech, since your talk, was the guilt, and that's something that like I agree
Right.
with you and Nuke, like it's so embedded. So it's like my fear is that like I am guilty and I am not good enough.
Right.
Like that there's that
Right.
deep sense of like even being here.
Exactly. So the belief that I'm not good enough is what is generated by guilt and vice versa. It feeds each other.
Yes.
Because if I am as God created me, clearly I'm good enough.
Yes.
If I'm not good enough, then I am no longer as God created me. In other words, I must have done something so bad
Mm-hmm.
that I'm no longer the eternal innocence that I keep hearing I am.
Yes.
And I don't believe it anymore. I've done something, and
Yes.
you never figure out what. The ego will come up with things that you've done in the illusion, and all of us have done enough stuff to
Yes.
feel guilty for a long time, because that's what we do. But it comes from
Yes.
the belief.
Yes.
It comes
Yes.
from the foundational belief that I'm guilty.
So the undoing of it, you said that like doing the practice again and again.
Yep.
What I've experienced is like after a particularly big breakthrough, the ego comes in with a vengeance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it comes in. Oh, I'll have to get the territory back.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and
absolutely.
I mean, even just yesterday, I couldn't get a ride to this event that I really wanted to get a ride to, and I just like I was so dejected. I felt like the world was just about to end.
Yeah.
And I surrendered. Thank God. Like I surrendered, and then a ride, of course, appeared.
Right.
But it just shocks me how deep the attack can be.
Right.
Like it feels like a war, and I don't know. Like to me, sometimes Course in Miracles, like it's like such a strong dichotomy, between the realness and the unrealness,
Mhm.
that like it something about that like
But who is the I that makes it feel like a war?
is the not real I.
That's the ego.
Yeah.
So the ego puts up an army, and then it puts up another army, and then those two armies are going to fight, and it says we're at war.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be at war with.
Yeah.
The ego is a thought.
Yes.
That's all. And the other thing I just heard you say, I surrendered and then I got it right.
Yes.
You cannot do this work in
Mhm,
order to
mhm, to
get,
get things.
something in the illusion.
Yes.
It will backfire.
Do you recommend like catching yourself, like when it's sort of like using that logic? To, I'll surrender so I can get what I
Right.
want.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not surrender.
That's
That's
what,
simply telling the Holy Spirit what you want, and this is what it should look like.
right.
And the Holy Spirit doesn't really care whether you get it right or not, doesn't care whether you get to this event or not. The Holy Spirit does care whether I'm totally at peace.
Mm.
So I surrender, literally surrender means
Mm.
I don't care what comes out of this.
Mhm.
I'm not surrendering in order to get it right. That's not surrendering.
Mhm.
That's manipulating the Holy Spirit. It won't work.
No, it backfires.
Yeah, it can backfire, and I've heard of a lot of people, I needed a car and I manifested a car.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
maybe.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Well, it's the taking things personally, right? When things happen well, and when it's a
Yeah.
positive, we take it personally.
yeah,
We're like, oh,
exactly.
it's me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I've got my own private Holy Spirit.
yes.
A friend of ours calls it making the Holy Spirit your bitch.
Yes, there is a teaching though that I really also resonate with, which kind of says like accept it all. So
Mhm.
like that attack when it's like
Yep.
really rages, to really accept it and sort of surrender to it happening.
Yeah.
Do you feel that that's also what it's pointing to? So instead of like feeling that war, instead of feeling that clash of the
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
worlds almost.
Exactly. And what happens if I totally surrender to? There is no war.
Right. Yeah. In that moment, it's just it's like a
That war,
mirage.
the moment
It's a
that
mirage.
that war is gone, because the war can only be from my resisting what is happening. So I want to go to an event and I can't have it right. My ego resists that, is furious, and says, okay, we're going to surrender and get it right. No. If I surrender, I'm happy not going to this event.
Sure.
And then the question that the Course teaches us at every page is, what is it for?
What's the
What did I want to go to the event for? What would that be for? What is not going to the event
The
for?
purpose.
Yeah,
Like what
what's
you
the
said,
purpose?
what's the purpose?
What's the deeper purpose?
Okay.
And as Tom realized from driving here, the purpose is to learn the belief that I'm not important or that I can be rejected.
The gratefulness for the upset.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
the hugest
Constant
difference.
gratitude.
Constant gratitude.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, I'm gonna jump
Gratitude.
in.
Yes.
I want to do it. I'm upset because my landlord wants me to sign this.
Stop. I'm upset.
I'm upset.
Step 2.
It's about me.
It's about me. Notice how the ego wanted to get the justification in. The problem with that, as soon as I get the justification in, I'm going to be right about that.
Yeah.
So that's the ego's plan for salvation, is to make it real first and then to do the forgiveness. Forgiveness means to overlook, which means whatever I thought happened didn't happen. Whatever I thought was the cause of my upset is not the cause of my upset. It's just a thought. Okay, so it's about me. Step 2, it's about me. Step 3,
I feel annoyed.
you feel annoyed,
I feel frustrated. I
frustrated,
feel angry.
angry,
I feel anxious that I can find a new place. I feel disgusted.
disgusted.
Yeah. I was going to say his behavior.
What was the last one?
I was going to say I feel disgusted at his
Yeah.
behavior.
Okay,
But
so
I feel disgusted.
you feel disgusted. Now close your eyes and pick the strongest feeling in this little incident.
Rage.
It's rage. Wonderful. So go back to being little Ken. You weren't called little Ken when you were Ken, when you were little. What were you called when you were little?
Check Kwong.
Chick Kwong. Little Chick Kwong is really enraged. What's happening around you?
Fighting.
People are fighting. Who's fighting?
The family.
The family is fighting. And how old are you?
5.
I'm 5 years old and the family is fighting and the feeling is one of rage. What is that feeling saying about me?
Powerless.
I'm powerless. Wonderful. Now open your eyes and say, forgive me for believing I'm powerless.
Forgive me for feeling that I'm
Believing.
Forgive me for believing that I'm powerless.
That is not true. You made that up.
That is not true. I made that up.
Let it go. You're not responsible for the people around you. You're not responsible for their process. You, as a little boy, do not have the power to change adults' behavior. You, as a fully grown man, don't have the power to change people's behavior. Let
I
it
don't
go.
have the power to change other people's behavior.
But I do have the power to change how I feel and how I perceive it.
But I do have the power to change how I feel and how I perceive it.
Now I'll do the same one back to you. Forgive me for believing that I'm powerless.
I say that. You say it.
I'm saying it to you, and you
Uh-huh.
do the forgiveness back to me. So forgive me for believing that I'm powerless.
Forgive me.
No, you
I
do
forgive
the
you.
forgiveness.
I forgive you for feeling that you felt powerless.
Okay, why is that not true that I'm, see, it's a mistaken belief. Why is it not true that I'm powerless?
Because you're love.
Thank you. And that's the only power there is. There's no opposing power. That's all you were as little Chen Kwang,
Check Kwong.
Che Kwang. As a little boy, that's all you were. As a grown man, that's all you are. That's the only power that matters. So rest in that. Okay, now go back to the original upset. How does it feel now?
There's less charge about it.
But on a scale of 1 to 10. You know, you slipped in the word landlord, so on a scale of 1 to 10, the idea of your landlord is still
It's 3.
a 3. Wonderful. Now close your eyes and ask yourself, what is that 3? What is that feeling that's still there?
Annoyed.
I'm still annoyed. Okay, it's not quite enraged anymore, now I'm annoyed. Go back to being a little boy. Feel that annoyance. What's happening?
Nothing seems to go right.
Nothing ever goes right
Yeah.
in your little mind. And what does that say about you? What's the message you're giving yourself when you think nothing
It's
ever...
my fault.
It's my fault. Wonderful. So there's a deep foundational guilt. Everything is my fault. You want to open your eyes? So forgive me for believing that everything is my fault.
Forgive me for believing that everything is my fault.
That is not true, Ken.
That is
You
not
made that up.
Yeah.
Nothing ever goes wrong, so how can there be fault? So the fact that that it appears that nothing is going right in my family doesn't say anything about me. It just offers me the opportunity to do my work now. That's all.
So I forgive you for believing that everything was your fault.
Thank
It
you.
can't be true because you are faultless.
There's no fault. Your landlord is not at fault, your parents are not at fault, your family is not at fault, you're not at fault. There is no fault. You're foundationally innocent. That's your truth. That's who you are. So close your eyes. Your landlord is doing all kinds of wonderful things that landlords have the power to do. How do you feel?
Whatever.
Yeah. See, then what then happens is the annoyance, the rage goes to annoyance, and then it goes to curiosity. I wonder what's going to happen next. What does he do? He won't give you a lease, or
Well, he wants me. He probably, hey, you know, I'm gonna have to move out.
you're going to have to move out. Wow. Where are you going to move to?
I don't know, Oakland. Probably
Isn't that
somewhere
exciting?
else. It is actually.
Right. So that's the shift. So instead of, oh my God, I have to move out, which is terrible.
Yeah.
There's not an ego that likes to move,
Yeah.
other than a moving company. They really enjoy it. But normal people don't like to move. But you can now be curious. I wonder where I end up. Maybe you move to Costa Rica? That's an interesting thought.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool.
Cool.
Feedback, comments, Cloud? No?
What is that shift that's actually taking place when we're doing this process from the rage, and then we do the process of the forgiveness process, and then what exactly helps us lose that charge?
The transformation of the mistaken identity. See, the charge is chosen by the I that I made up that doesn't exist. So if I recognize that I does not exist, then that I can no longer choose my feelings for me.
So it's just recognition is what it is.
That's it. It's remembrance.
Mhm.
To recognize means to know again. So to know again who I truly am is what makes the shift. And then from that knowing again, I cannot be annoyed or irritated or enraged, because there's nobody there to choose that. That I is transformed.
I see.
Rossi, you have a question?
Yes. You said at the talk like that some 15% sometimes like you feel that you're loved.
Yeah.
Why is this like such a small number for us?
I think it's a huge number.
I know. I mean, from like 0.5. I
Does
know.
it matter?
What? I mean, because it ties to the concept of enlightenment, right? You know, the concept that there is like this like state when we remember all the time. Is
Right.
that such thing?
I would imagine there's such a thing. I haven't experienced it yet,
Yeah.
nor is that my goal.
It's not your goal.
My goal is to continuously go back to, as Cloud said, to catch an upset, to recognize that a correction is immediately required. And if I do that constantly, consistently, I will have an experience of ever-increasing peace. I do. Compared to where I was 20 years ago, there's no comparison. I just say 15% in order to lower people's expectation that
Okay.
you do this 2 or 3 times a year enlightened. No, it's going to take a while. And we do this full time.
Yeah.
Diederik, I want to close with you talking about the center and how people can get in. People are going to watch this and want to know more about your work and how to get in touch with you. So you can just say, how people can continue this work with you.
And don't forget they have to go to our website to enroll.
Yeah. So there's a number of things we can do together. One is to go to the website, www.choose-again.com, and there is a place, and I never know where it is because I'm virtually illiterate when it comes to these things, but there is a place where you can sign up for receiving a morning message. And every day we send out a message with a little interpretation. You can react to that, you can ask questions about that, you can interact with that teaching of that morning. That comes every day. To actually go to Costa Rica is a wonderful experience. The center runs 365 days a year. It's always open. It's high in the hills above Lake Arenal. It's incredibly beautiful, very peaceful, with really nothing but wind and birds and incredible views and insects and flowers, and it's a stunning place. If you want to have an experience different from our center, Claudia and I teach a workshop in Nosara on the coast of Costa Rica, November 8 to 15, I think, or 7 to 14, somewhere around there, at the Omega Institute flagship called Blue Spirit, and that's magnificent. We also do a lot of workshops in other parts of the world. So if you go to our website, you'll know where we'll be, or where I will be, or where Claudia will be, or where other people will be at any given time. There's lots of opportunities to tie in. We're also going to work on, which we haven't done yet, but is in progress, having virtual circles. And people like Ken will be absolutely essential in setting that up for us, because that's his expertise and not mine. So that'll be fun. You have another question, Rossi, or not?
No. Awesome.
Okay.
That's awesome. We don't have time.
We don't have
Gotta
time.
wrap up.
We're done.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.